Well, I am Talley Williams, and I would like to welcome each of you to 500X Gallery and to the Artist Talk of Narong Tintamusik. I want to thank each of you for coming today. I realize, as Kanye say, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us today, and we love you for it. Many of you know Narong, and you are familiar with the subject matter of his work. Narong is an artist who ferries into the atmosphere of multimedia work. And his work is very layered, his work is very colorful, his work is very unique and deals with the subject matter of sexual trauma. And today we are going to have a discussion about his work, about what informs it, and his greatest hope for the work. I realize that many of you have your phones here, and you'll be tempted to do more recording than you are to pay attention. But I would like for you to participate with your attention, participate with your energy, and participate by giving honor to this very courageous artist. I'm going to begin by sharing with you how I came to know Narong. I was actually coming to 500X Gallery, which I had visited the gallery in previous years. And the reason that I visit 500X Gallery is because I call this incubative space, experimental space, where artists are invited to touch on subject matter that is not popular, political, and is challenging to us. And I was looking online, and I happened to run across one of Narong's sculptures. When I saw the sculpture, I was refreshingly taken aback. I have a son who has experience and challenge with ulcerative colitis, and so when I saw Narong's sculpture, it looked like the intestines, and I got this like immediate sickening feeling in my sacral chakra, which is where the intestines are. And I just thought, I've got to go and speak to this artist and find out what this work is about, and if this visceral response that I'm having to it is in fact what the work is relative to. I came into the gallery and I met this young man, and I walked over. I was here to see another artist's work, but I saw that work not knowing that you were the creator of it, and I said to you, tell me about this work. And I was pleased to find that the experience that I had, the reaction that I had to it, was in fact your intention behind the work. And Narong did in fact tell me that that feeling that you get from the work, what you see in the work, is actually what the work is about. Now, having said that, Narong, I would like for you to tell us a bit about your background. There's information online that you came to America at 10 years old from Thailand. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I was born in Dallas, Texas. But when I was 4 years old, I moved to Thailand because my parents had some family business that we had to take care of. Mm-hmm. So we had a family business back there. So I stayed there till around like 8th grade. And I came here to the States, come back to the States in 9th grade and stayed here ever since. So in Thailand, visual arts wasn't considered like high art as compared to music. So your parents want to take you to music classes as opposed to visual art class or poetry or writing or theater. So music had like priority. So I learned the recorder, I learned the keyboard. I wasn't any good like instrumentalist or anything like that, but because I was forced to do so. But I felt like music just had the rigidity to learning the language. So music, you had to learn the language before playing the notes. You had to learn the notes and you play the music. So I felt like there was just rigidity to music. So that made me want to go the other way. So I wanted to do art, but I couldn't do it back in Thailand. So when I came to the States, I finally signed up for that art class in ninth grade as an elective.
Really?
Yeah, so I did art ever since.
Huh. Now that's interesting. I've had some conversations with you, but when you say today that music informed your passion or ignited your passion for the arts, and that your name, really phonically, music is relative to your process, I find that fascinating. Can you tell us a bit about your process as an artist?
I think my work is intuitive. So when it comes to 2D pieces, I don't really think of the concept or the theme. So it's more about the material. So I'm putting the paint down in the spray paint and try to scrape it with like a sharp object like a palette knife. But now with this show, it was more three-dimensional, so you can't be too intuitive. You still need to think about the form. You need to do some planning. And I think doing sculpture now helped because I was getting more and more busy with my life. And that I couldn't just do one big sitting anymore. I kind of like that it slowed me down. So now I'm thinking, I have like a general form in my head, but I don't usually do sketches. But sometimes I do sketches. But I think these pieces are meant to just be standalone pieces, but it might ultimately inform some of the work. But I try to have just a mental image and wing it.
I see. I was very interested in your process because you said your work is very intuitive and that you don't think as much about the work and that the drawings come to you, I think you shared with me, almost as a form of automatic drawing, that you don't think about them, they come to you. Can you share with us when those intuitive drawings come to you, how they come to you? Is there something that ignites them, or is there something that you're experiencing, or is it something that you've seen that makes that intuitive drawing take place?
I think it just begins with the initial mark. So I was just taking like a red Sharpie, red is my favorite color, so I was just simply scribbling it, and then somehow the form just comes out. And I don't really think too much about the subject matter, but I think I was trying to complete the picture as much as I can within the single sitting. So I don't want to come back to the work again. So it's kind of like a 30-minute drawing. So I'm just trying to draw some marks and okay, I see some marks. Maybe the marks become teeth, and then it becomes the eyes, and then it becomes the figure getting shocked. It's like the one on the left, or the one in the middle becomes like a watery spirit trapped in this hollow frame. So I think it just initially became initial marks, and it just goes up into the form.
And how long is the transition, time-wise, from the sketch that you execute to the 3D sculpture that you create?
Sometimes I would work on the piece first, the sculpture, and then I would do the drawing in the middle. So while I'm working on the sculpture, I'll just do the drawing, and then maybe the drawing helps give me the final picture of what it looks like. So sometimes I don't do the drawing beforehand, starting. So I kind of like the drawing becomes like the middle, the intermediate.
The drawing becomes the intermediate? Explain that a little better.
So it's kind of like I would do the piece first, do the sculpture first, and then I would do the drawing. And I look at the drawing like, okay, I'm just gonna take what piece I'm working now, like this bed frame piece, and I look at the drawing like, okay, I kind of wanted something like that, and I finish the sculpture.
Now, because you're dealing with a subject matter relative to your own experiences, sexual trauma. When you do finalize the 3D piece, are you connected to the outcome of the sculpture? Do you recognize the sculpture as part of your experiential landscape in sexual trauma, or are you as surprised with the outcome as the audience may be?
I feel like I was surprised. I'm like, how do I even make that? I think as artists feel like we look at the back of work. I'm like, how do we have the willpower or the magical abilities to make the work? I don't know. I think we just constantly surprise ourselves.
It's true.
I don't know how the final product will look like. I'm like, how did it look like this? But like, I just gotta accept it.
That always interests me when I spoke to you in the past regarding your pieces, because again, the first sculpture that I encountered of your work looked exactly like images that I've seen of my son's colon when it is inflamed. And when I spoke to you about the sculpture that you created, you told me that that work was derived intuitively. So when you view your works, is there an attachment or sensation in your body as to where those pieces are? Like the colon that I saw, do you see these spaces in your colon or in your abdomen relative to how you're feeling about the trauma?
I think maybe when I look at the pieces, I feel like it's more like a stomach area. I think because like maybe I'm like a foodie or something, and I think being a guy, like the food feeds the soul. So I feel like when I'm in a very anxious or stressful situation, it feels like it's localized in the abdomen area. So maybe that's why that particular piece have the abdomen or the stomach like bursted out.
Having said that, the title of this exhibit is "This Vessel Holds No Water." And I want to share a scripture relative to that. Are you familiar with the scripture relative to this?
No.
To that title?
No.
The King James Bible says, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me and the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that do not hold water." And you spoke of, when we've been in dialogue about the pieces, that they related to you in terms of a brokenness that you had inside relative to your ability to be intimate. And how did you come to the title, "This Vessel Holds No Water"?
I like my titles like being like poetic. I just feel like we're all vessels holding life, holding the essence of being, able to also continuing the essence with another person and procreate and make and complete and reproduce and make complete your lineage. That's how I think, like, as water, as maybe like intimacy and sex. And I feel, because of having trauma, being a sexual abuse survivor at a young age, I feel that my vessel is like broken. So the water that flows to me, it leaks. So I feel like I'm not able to continue on the lineage because I couldn't do the intimacy part.
And as an artist and the creator of these various works, what intimacy is it that you are expressing through the sculptures?
I think that's a difficult question.
That's a difficult question?
Yeah.
I understand. Can you tell us when you are in the process of making and layering of these three mediums, because I read your bio and I remember reading that you use spray paint, you use clay, and you use epoxy and acrylic, is that correct? All right. Of those mediums, which do you think is the most communicative of expressiveness for you in how you go about layering your work? Like which medium best communicates what it is you're trying to say through your work?
I would say the acrylic paint, because I think the epoxy clay for the sculptures were just to build the form. I'm a painter at heart, so it seemed like the sculptures were just the form while focusing more on the paint, the exterior. So I didn't really care too much about more like a traditional sculptor would think about all the different materials and forms. I was thinking more about just painting the form. So I think being just the bread and butter with acrylic paint, that's like my go-to for creating the feeling I want to create with the works.
That's exciting. I was reading also, as you create your works, that you said you use a exacting knife, or
It's kind of like a palette knife.
palette knife.
Yeah.
And that the palette knife reveals images as you use it. Can you tell us a bit about that? Like, how does that happen? Specifically, did you use the palette knife on this piece? How does that happen?
So I would put acrylic paint on top of the mattress, and then I would spray paint on top. So then I'll use the palette knife to kind of scrape while it's drying. So it's still like it's a wet on wet technique where you can see like the lacerations. That's why you can see the underlayer being like more of a yellowish pink, but the top layer might be more like a blue, yellow. So you're pretty much revealing your underlayers. They almost look like scratch marks.
And as you work in layers with your sculptures, are there layers of communication that occur as you're creating them?
I think they revealed what's underneath, and they're creating lines and definition. So I feel like when I'm scratching the sculpture or creating these lacerations on it, I'm feeling like I'm just uncovering myself. Because I'm covering it and then I'm like removing it. So it's almost like you're putting a surplus on you, like some kind of a lotion or something, but you're taking it off to reveal what was dried. To cover what was dried, you're putting the moisture, but you're still removing it.
And so from that statement, I'd like to ask you, when you execute these sculptures, is there a physical sensation relative to trauma that you experience? Because you're talking about scraping, lacerations, layers, and even your favorite medium. So when you're working in those layers, do you experience those layers?
I don't think so. I think because I contextualize a piece after. So I'm thinking more about the labor. I think that helps you not like crying all the time. Like when I'm making the work, that's just too much. I think when I look at the work after it's done, then I feel the emotions. So I guess
after it's done.
Yeah, after it's done. That's why I'm like, when people ask me like newly, what does the work mean? I might not have the best verbiage for it because it's contextualized after.
Wow.
So I don't think about the meaning of the work.
While you're doing it.
Yeah.
Huh.
So when maybe like give like a month, I have more like formulated talk about what the works mean individually. But when you talk to me like right when it's finished, like I don't really know what 100% what it is. It takes time to say. Yeah.
Oh wow. And I'm interested to know, and I'm sure that the audience is interested to know too. I follow you on Instagram, and I just find your posting to be on the level of sacrificial, because you not only share your work, you share the process behind your work. You share what materials you use. And I was particularly fond of an image that you shared where you said that your dog was lying on the bed, and this would be the last time that he would be able to lie on the bed. And when I saw that post, I thought to myself, relative to giving offerings regarding your work, that many times when there's trauma involved, that is the last time that we experience certain spaces relative to our work. So having said that, the choosing of the bed frame, the choosing of these shapes for your work, are they hallmarks in your experience with your work? Like, do they stand out as, this was the last time this occurred, this is the first time I'm approaching this, this is an intermediate time in my life? Do they represent phases in your life?
I think so, in a sense. Sometimes some works, they represent very specific moments in my life. And some works, like the ones behind us, I think they're more generalized. And more like a long-term, maybe acute symptoms. But some pieces are more about the specific moment.
Would you mind sharing with us a piece that is relative to a specific moment that you are comfortable with?
I want to talk about this piece. I think it's a small piece.
I like that.
I like this piece because I feel like this one is about my childhood, and I couldn't process adult things at that time like many kids could, and I think I was trying to hide the fact and carry a facade, and I was trying to clean the laundry. I'm cleaning dirty laundry, but I think it got too much to where the laundry could not be bleached out anymore. But the eyes are seeing white. So you're seeing the bleach in your eyes, but the fabric is not. So I feel like at that time I was trying to hold my silence, and I did for 14 years.
You held your silence for 14 years.
So I feel like I was blind to thinking that it was bleached.
And just as a point of reference, and again, I know that we're lifting heavy weight today, and there's no way to be light about heavy weight. As a child communicating or experiencing what you did, surviving sexual trauma, were your family members at all aware? Did they notice any change in your behavior?
I was very happy, but then they noticed that I wasn't as happy, but didn't understand why. So they took me to a psychologist, I think, in middle school, just to figure out what happened. But I think I kind of deflected and changed the scenario to be like, oh, I'm just jealous of my brother, because he was getting attention, even though it was nothing about him. I think I was just doing the things that kids do just to deflect off the situation, and I don't know if the psychologist was fooled or he just kind of played along with it, but I think they noticed that there were signs, but they didn't know what it was. And I don't blame my parents, because they haven't been through this kind of situation where they have kids experience sexual trauma.
And if young Narong were to walk through this exhibit today, because he is present with you now, what would you say to him about the works that you create? About him surviving the sexual trauma?
I would say that this is what you're experiencing and what had to go through, but there's still light in that tunnel. And that I honestly thought I was just gonna die with the secret, but I think I made the decision to say I couldn't do it anymore. I want to tell young Narong that there's still light in the tunnel.
There's still light in the tunnel.
You'll find the strength to do so.
Yes. Having said that, I want to share something with the audience, and then we will piggyback off this comment. One of the reasons that I agreed to moderate this artist talk with you is because I think we live in the context of a world that seems to be intended on either exploiting our experiences and making them larger than life, making ourselves the center of attention, or we are voyeuristic in looking at people's experiences, peeping through the keyholes of their lives. And one of the things that I was just absolutely blown away with about your work is your brutal and vulnerable at the same time work that you're doing. Did you, when you were creating these pieces, what was your highest intention for this exhibit?
I think when
Keep that in mind.
I think when I make my art, it does come from a selfish place.
Does it?
I was thinking for myself first, like I just needed that self-liberation, and whatever the audience thinks after, I wasn't as concerned with how they perceive the pieces. So maybe that's why the works don't seem diluted.
Because of the freedom of your creativity,
Yeah.
your creative process. As you create these works, these 3D works, and because I function as a 3D sculptor as well, and I'm often struck when a work is complete with my ability to translate the concept of the work, what informed the work, and what I finally materialize, and I walk around the work. I'm again struck by what I brought from one realm to this physical realm. Is there a release that you feel with different works relative to scale? Like if the piece is larger, like the bed or the frame of the bed, is it more liberating for you than say a smaller piece like that one or this one behind us?
Yeah, I definitely feel like the bigger pieces translate what I felt within that portal, within that realm more. I felt more released. But I think maybe because these pieces are just so big, I feel like even greater release than the smaller pieces. I mean, these are cute and all, but these are cute. I mean, I'm like, I don't think I'm feeling it as more. I don't know why. Maybe just the physical weight. You feel like you have this giant weight within you, and you just translate to a big piece. So I don't think you can condense things. When you try to condense to a small piece, it feels like you're cutting corners.
I do think that that does occur, that when you condense things, that sometimes you're cutting corners. But relative to this piece here that you said you think speaks more to your childhood, it can be very atomic because you were a child there, but that child grew into this man. Do you imagine that the works that you create and that you produce go on to have a life of their own once you release them?
As being like when maybe going somewhere else, like to another exhibition space kind of thing?
Well, more the information that's, when you created this work intuitively and it goes out into the world, do you imagine that this image, this 3D sculpture goes on to have a life of its own? There are people here that will take away from this space the imagery of it and what you were intending when the work was complete.
I think I'm okay with the works like growing and have a wider interpretation of what people would take away from it. Even this, I feel like this is my interpretation of the work, and I don't think it's absolute. I think people could insert themselves in whatever way they want it, and I'm okay with that. So I don't feel like I need to always try to have the narrative be limited. So if people feel like this isn't exactly what I experienced for, maybe it's something closer to them, closer to home, I'm okay with that.
I see. Of this collection, can you share with the audience which is your, if we can say this, a favorite piece? Which is your favorite piece of this exhibit?
I like that one. That's the same name, same title. This vessel holds no water. I think because it's not too big, it's not too clunky. I like it suspended. I kind of like that it didn't have normal legs. and the legs are kind of inspired by sea urchin spines. So sea urchin spines are their legs. So I like that the piece could not stand on its own. It needs like assistance or need help, and that it's kind of fun to look inside the work to feel, to see that crevice. I think I know, and I really like this piece a lot.
I'm drawn to it too. Can you share with us your intention behind suspending the pieces by chain link?
I think when I think about chains, it kind of like maybe suggests like torture or suggests being like a torture chamber of sorts. I kind of like the man-made material that practically is strong. So I kind of like the chain feel like you're suspended, but you're not being let go. So you feel like you're hanging there to suffer. So I feel like the body is just hanging there as opposed to dying completely or living completely.
Very well said. I was interested when I saw your work to find that you have a background in biology, and that so many of your pieces, again, appear to be the innards of our digestive system or our emotive energy. And I wondered, when you were studying biology or chose biology as your academic platform, did you have intention of marrying your biology background with your artistic process, or is that just something that evolved organically?
I think that one evolved organically because I couldn't study art because my parents like, oh, that's not gonna make you money. So I did something what I thought I was gonna be like. I was gonna be a marine biologist.
Marine biologist.
Because I have like this interest when I was a kid. But when I got to actually studying the subject, I felt like I was being tortured.
How so?
I was forced to study something I wasn't interested in. Even though I thought I was gonna pursue that path instead of being an artist. And people would joke at me like, oh, are you gonna take pictures of fish, or trying to marriage that artist and with the science thing, are you gonna go out in the field and take pictures of fish? I'm like, I don't think so. That's why I kind of disregarded the science part when I first making art. But then I realized somehow it just came back to me being very fleshy or organic. So I think it wasn't like intentional, but now like I'm embracing it.
That is extremely interesting to me. I also take note of the fact that your interest was in water. You said that I read in some of the literature regarding your work that you experience water as being healing, and that many of the pieces that you create, you see them as sea urchins, and then having the background, choosing inadvertently to go into biology. Do you think that your choice of approaching biology as a sort of like a distraction or something that you were doing to please your parents, do you sense yourself that studying biology was a necessary tool for creating your work?
I would say yes now. I think initially it wasn't like, oh, why I'm doing this. I could have just studied art and be like everybody else. But I think all these pathways that were not direct, this meandering, is what is gonna take you to where you need it to be. I know, it's just like things we do, like with all these different pathways, it's somehow connected to where we need to be.
And how much of this pathway, this meandering pathway, now that you're at this point in your life, I understand you recently celebrated a birthday. Yay, thank you. Belated happy birthday.
Thank you.
And as I saw some of the posts regarding your birthday, I was thrilled because you are several times over a survivor. Because I don't know if our audience is aware that sexual trauma survivors often give over to drug addiction, suicide, and other tragedies because they're overwhelmed with carrying around the trauma that occurred in their life. So as I saw the celebration of your birthday and I connected it to this work that you're doing now, I couldn't help but imagine where you saw yourself when you ferried into biology, like where you saw that going. Did you see it leading to this, or was it just a fulfillment of not wanting your parents to be displeased?
I didn't see the school at the time, biology, to be something, to be this. I don't think I had that foresight. I was gonna be a marine biologist or something.
A marine biologist?
Yeah, like I would go to school here at Richardson and UTD, study biology, and maybe go to like Corpus Christi or Galveston or something just to get my master's or PhD or something like that. I think I had like this pathway, but good thing that it didn't work out.
I agree. Did you know when you were creating these works that this was, as an artist, something courageous to do? Did you see it that way, or were you just freeing yourself from the emotion that you were feeling inside?
I think I was thinking more about the emotions, but I'm aware that to other people that it is courageous, but to me, I don't think that was the most important thing. To be courageous to other people. I was trying to like liberate myself first and foremost. I don't know. I think outside perspective wasn't like something that's the most important thing, how people see it. Maybe because like when I was a kid, like I think I didn't want to be a burden with other people. That's why I held my silence. That's why I was focusing more on myself as opposed to what people think.
Say that again for me.
Even though that doesn't make sense, I'm like holding it within myself. But again, I was actually doing it just because I was afraid what people think. It's a little, I don't know, a little bit twisted.
It's a beautiful twist.
Yeah.
I say it's a beautiful twist because I think about people who struggle with sexual trauma and keep that to themselves, that you weren't thinking of the audience, but you were thinking of yourself, and that giving and rendering of your own experience actually liberating them. That's why I said it. I think it was a beautiful twist. I can't help but also talk about your color choices with your work.
I love red.
Okay.
I don't know, I think because I'm an Aries. So I love red.
Fire sign.
Yeah, so I love red. And I love green too because it's a complementary color to red. It doesn't bring Christmas to me. It doesn't. I think somehow it just works out with the red and the green. It doesn't bring Christmas. I love red. And I think it just draws you in. I feel like red is a concentration. It's a flame. But for some reason, with this body of work, I'm thinking about water.
Even with the red.
Even with the red, I'm thinking water. Maybe you can't have too much flame without the water to extinguish it, to tone it down. So I think it still needs to have life, but still you don't want it to burn down the house. That's why I'm trying to maintain the fire inside, just not to just make me to like a piece of coal or anything. Because the fire will just keep on growing and growing, I think that's the trauma, it's still gonna grow. So I need to like continually extinguish it.
Ah, I see. I actually can see that in the work. So red being your favorite color, green being the balance of the color, and this piece here, can you tell us the name of this piece?
I think that piece called I Do Not Belong Here.
I Do Not Belong Here.
Yes, so it's kind of like that point in my life where when I was a kid, I would go to the beach a lot. I'm a city boy. But we would go to the beach a lot, and I would tell my parents to go to this rocks. They were a mile away, just a bunch of rocks. And when the tides recede, it would trap all these creatures in the rocks. So I would go as a young kid, that's why I was like, I want to be a marine biologist. I was just going around and picking up sea creatures from these trapped places. So I was thinking of the moment where I picked up this crab that was playing dead. But I knew it was playing dead because I read a book about it.
Okay.
So I put it back. I said it's going to come back to life. But I think maybe that moment when I was picking up that crab parallels my existence being trapped, but still someone else thought it was entertaining. I thought it was entertaining that I picked up the crab, but someone else in my past thought it was entertaining to make me feel trapped. So that's why I parallel a lot with nature, those experiences. It's towards that in that piece it feels like a intestine or soul being within this tide pool, but it's showing fangs, just to say that it's like it's dangerous, when in actuality it's like bleeding. So I feel like it's like the lacerated soul, but it's showing armor.
So the vessel that houses the creatures that you created inside of that, when you executed this particular piece, which part of the structure came first?
It has to be the rock, the kind of that first, and then I made the intestine creature thing later, and I painted that separately. So once both are done, and I'll just kind of place the creature inside the rock, and then put some kind of a resinous material to seal it, to it be stuck there.
Did the piece being stuck there, was that relative to how you felt? Did you feel stuck? Did you feel like that was expressing?
Yeah, I feel like I was just like putting it there and sealing it. It feels like, I don't know, when I put it, it feels like clunky. When you put the piece in there, the creature in the rock, is like, I felt like it was heavy, like it was clunky. I tried like to glue it down.
Are these pieces that we are sitting in the midst of, are they chronicles to your freedom? You said you felt stuck in this piece. This piece was relative to childhood. And where does, I'm asking you two questions at once. Chronologically, where does this piece fit between that piece and this one?
I felt like this one was the very beginning. The very beginning. And that was kind of like, that piece was kind of like me going on vacation and using vacation as like a coping mechanism. And this one, I think, can be present and past.
Present and past.
Because I feel like I still have these barriers with being completely open to physical intimacy. So even though this seems like the past, I feel like it's the present.
I'm careful as I approach this question, and you are absolutely free to pass, hold up an invisible pass card on it. When you created this piece, did you experience a liberation in your sexuality, this one in particular, because you said it's past and present? So in some ways, some of the trauma that you experience is connected to this piece, and at the same time, if I'm understanding you correctly, your own sexual liberation is relative to this piece. So when you completed it, from between childhood, vacation, and the now, was it an exact trigger or liberation to your sexual liberation and freedom?
I think I feel liberated by the piece because I saw how ugly it is.
This?
Yeah, I think it's ugly. Because I think it didn't have that fantasy I like. It felt like too direct. I feel disturbed. I feel disturbed by the piece, and I think, but I liked it as a starting point to what's next. So And I think this one was like wake up call to me that I can't try to be around the bush with my partner and not fully releasing myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And it's reminding me that I still have a lot of work to do, and it can't be something passive. It has to be an active thing that I have to make myself comfortable, because if I don't, it's gonna be on the back burner. So it's a reminder to be, there's still work to be done, that I'm striving towards it.
Having said that, survivors of sexual trauma have a tendency to blame themselves for the assault. I want to ask you, since you said, this is ugly and it's uncomfortable for you, is there some blaming that you experience when you create these pieces? Do feelings of blame and shame manifest for you in the work?
I don't think it's like a strong feeling. I do feel the remnants of shame and guilt, because I feel like it was my fault for not saying anything about it sooner, or I let it fester. So I think when we let things fester and let times pass, it just grows. It takes a life of its own. But I don't think this feeling was a strong feeling. It's more like lingering.
Were you able to confront the person who assaulted you?
No.
You weren't. Do you feel in some way that the works that you create are you're confronting the person who assaulted you?
I think in my work, I don't usually think about the perpetrator. I think I was confronting my own darkness. So I feel like my own darkness was stronger than the perpetrator.
Your own darkness
Yeah.
was stronger than the perpetrator.
Yeah. So I feel like the perpetrator just gave me things that grew, and I'm just trying to chop it down.
Chop it down. I cannot tell you again how impressed I am with your courage to create objects of your trauma. And I say that specifically because in my own practice with different clients, how often I've heard that they felt blamed, or that the assault was their fault. And one of the things that another aspect, I should say, of your work that I think is heralding is that looking at the works, particularly this one, because you just referred to it as ugly, some of the other works that you've created that you refer to as Urchins and works like that, I think that your work is, and I want to commend you for it, it gives perpetrators and predators a visual look at the hurt and harm that they create in the people that they assault. And you just said that you didn't attach any intention towards the perpetrator seeing the trauma that they caused in your life. Have you considered sharing your work with perpetrators? I know Oprah Winfrey some years ago had some men on her show who were predators. And I just wondered if you had considered sharing your work or taking your work into the penitentiary setting and using it as a vehicle to make them aware of or give them a visual of the harm that they cause.
I never thought about that, because I think all this time I was thinking too much about my own safety. But maybe, I think I like the idea. I want to see how they might react to the piece.
I would like to see that as well.
Yeah.
Another act of courage on your part.
I think maybe it's not on my bucket list.
No?
I think it wasn't like, but I like the idea. I don't know 100% I would like go to that level yet, because that's like direct confrontation.
Direct confrontation.
Yeah.
Empowering confrontation at that for you and for other victims of sexual assault. I remember from a conversation with you that often when you finish your works, you dismantle them or tear them apart, rip them. Can you share with the audience a bit about that, like how you came to decide that that was something that you wanted to do with the works? Because personally, as an artist, when I imagine, of all my works, there's only been one piece that I have destroyed. So how did you decide to make that a part of your practice?
I think that started when I painted these big paintings that are site specific. So the structure was on the wall, like I would mount like panels of paper and then pin them on the wall, but when you try to dismount them, they're just gonna disintegrate. But I didn't want to destroy, I didn't want to have the painting not continue its life or its legacy. So I cut the painting up for like future collage work, so it's able to live its own, another life again, but a different life. I kind of like when I make these repurposed works just to, it had its own life and now like reincarnated. Like being a Buddhist, I think the body just reincarnated into another body, but you still have these remnants of the previous life.
I see.
But with these sculptures, I don't think they're gonna get destroyed. They're just gonna be kept. I think sculpture is kind of different. But I think this bed mattress piece might become something new.
And as you imagine its new life, have you considered what it would evolve to?
I like just thinking about what's next. So I think my next series is gonna be Make Love or Be Unloved. So I'm taking a lot of abandoned mattresses and spring boxes and building like these intestines and the body onto the mattress and spring boxes where the limbs come up, and I would like dissect the middle to see the core, the tortured soul. So I feel like when these mattresses, spring boxes were abandoned by other people, I feel like I'm reclaiming them, I'm claiming myself. So that'd be like a future thing, but I probably will execute it. I usually will do it.
That's wonderful and amazing at the same time. So when you, in that future idea or concept for the show, will there be several mattresses, or have you decided on like how many you would present in that particular collection?
I think I'll do a couple because this is just so big. I definitely like your thoughts about maybe the mattresses could be standing or against the wall, and how you were talking about maybe it's better just have it on the floor for now and not be standing up because it'd be too powerful.
He's telling on me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you told like I like your ideas, so I feel like maybe in the future I'll have these mattresses like standing or sitting where they have legs and you can see the core, like how it dissected, like how a scientist would cut the animal. And maybe I just have a bunch just like around the gallery.
That's a very interesting, idea and concept. How much of the works that you create do you believe not only inform this exhibit that you were just speaking of, but how much of the evolution of your works do you believe contribute to your path as an artist?
I think as an artist, I personally like to experiment a lot, and I think every show, I try not to duplicate the same things I did, and maybe that experimentation helps like push through to new ideas. So I'm incredibly proud of this body of work. I'm a painter and drawer, so to see it being sculpture wasn't in my thought.
No?
No, I just had fantasies of being a sculptor. I just had fantasies.
I have fantasies of being a sculptor too.
But you are a sculptor, though.
That's the joke.
Yeah, I just had fantasies of being a sculptor because, like, in 9th grade, I did like a wire sculpture, like a figure wire sculpture. I think it was like the worst in the class, and for some reason that like traumatized me that I was the worst in the class.
Did you make that deduction, or just some of your class?
No, I did.
Okay.
So I did that, and I never did sculpture ever since until this past 2 years.
Ah.
So I've always been painting, but I think the painting just is a preparatory to what is now. So yeah, I think that wire sculpture, I think it made me still want to try sculpture in the future.
And that's often the case, that something that has a negative impact when we are younger and we're creating it, it comes to revisit us, and then it champions the very thing that we're focused on. I was particularly drawn as well to the fact that many of the sculptures that you have, say on this piece here, the bed frame, you began them with clay and the usage of foil. Was that, the usage of foil and of the clay, was that intuitive, or did something in your background as a biologist inform you that using those pieces, the foil to hold a shape, or the clay or the epoxy, the effect that it would have, was that what informed your choice to use those materials?
I think because I think science and biology, I think because it's just ever evolving.
Yes.
And I like the materials being flexible, like mutable. So
the
I think
foil?
Yeah,
because the foil you layered with.
Yeah. And I think the clay, because it moves and it doesn't, it's not stiff clay because it's kind of soft. So when I move the foil and the clay, however it dries and however it wants to behave, is that what it is?
So as you're forming the clay over the foil, does the clay, is it loose clay? Is it tight, or is it?
It's kind of like Play-Doh.
It's like Play-Doh.
So the Play-Doh is it's not stiff enough to hold the structures like that. But I think as I was building it up, and it becomes like, oh, maybe the next day the foil and the wire like bends a little bit over, and the next day maybe like once I work on it, it's more like it bends backwards. So I think because like being flexible to the materials and slowly building it up, I didn't know what the final form would be, because the materials are soft, but it gets hard overnight.
That's fascinating. I'm not sure that you and I discussed this when I came into the gallery and first saw this piece, but the sculpturing on the bed frame is it mirrors and is reflective of celestial sculptures when the galaxy is revealed. Did you know that those appear to be celestial prototypes as well?
I don't think so, but I think maybe the curves suggest that. The curves of the lines. I don't know, I didn't know they were like celestial.
They are. And you and I were just talking about before the audience came in how air and water are similar, and how often forms that we find on the Earth's landscape is also seen in the heavens, and that you related that to a frame where sleeping takes place, I think is almost magical.
Yeah, maybe that's why I thought like sleep was just like a dangerous place, and maybe somehow it was still supposed to be a spiritual, magical space. And maybe that's why I kind of wanted the bed and the bed frame to look like hideous.
A bit of a paradox. You mentioned a bit earlier that you are a practicing Buddhist.
I wouldn't say I'm practicing, but I would go like the once a year event.
Oh!
The once a year annual, New Year's. I would say that's practicing enough, right?
Okay, so you're a drive-by Buddhist.
Yeah. I think the works are not like completely 100% inspired by Buddhism, but just like more like a small injection.
I see. If you were to give voice to your works, if they were to speak now, tell me, because that's this piece on the wall, I was drawn to it. Tell us the name of that one.
Processing Poison.
Processing Poison. So if that piece were to speak and it were to have voice relative to your experience executing it and its finished product, what would that piece say from the wall?
I think like.
So it's a sound.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it can communicate the full words. Because I think with the tongue sticking out, it's just emitting sound.
Tongue?
Yeah, it has like on the very top of the head. Because the tongue sticking out, I think maybe it's like vocalizing.
Since you said that and you talked about music being a part of your process initially, and your love of music, do you listen to music when you create these pieces?
Sometimes. Sometimes. I usually listen, not pop music or anything, but usually a lot of rock music, rock and alternative music. I listened to a lot in high school. I wasn't like rock enough or alternative enough, but I tried to look the part in high school. But that still stuck with me. I think the angst of that type of music like spoke to me.
In what way?
Because there were just so much violence in that type of music genre I picked up in the certain songs. And I think somehow, even though I wasn't focusing about the lyrics, I think the tunes that being like the drums, and the guitars, I think it just, I don't know, I think amplified the piece.
I've often experienced rock music as a high decibel of screaming and expression of anger and torture. Is there anger in your work as well that informs it? Since you spoke about the tones of rock music and the guitar and all of that, is there anger in the pieces?
I think it gives the appearance of anger, but my default negative emotion is sadness.
Sadness.
Yes. So I think it looks angry, but I feel like it is more like somber. I feel like more sadness than anger, but I think it could project that emotion. But I feel more like sadness, even though I don't listen to the sad music when I'm making it.
I refer to this genre of work and the subject matter of it as heavy lifting. And you just spoke about heavy metal. And I know as a 3D artist myself, and even with some of my 2D material, that when I finish with the works, I feel drained. I feel, and in some cases, there's a heavy weight of oppression of the subject matter, the emotion, the history of the work. What do you do when you finish these works to bring levity? And do you experience, maybe I should start there, do you experience a heaviness after you finish the pieces?
No.
You don't?
I feel lightness.
You feel lightness.
Maybe that's why like it was just so ugly, so big, and so ever growing. I just pushed it out, and I feel lightness. And are there particular rituals that you, and when I say rituals, I just mean active routines that you practice when you begin and when you end a piece? I always walk my dog.
You walk your dog?
Yes, because I feel like they're more impatient than the artwork. So
they're more impatient.
So they want to be walked. So I do the walking first. I think exercise help to prep for the other exercise you have to do to make the work. So I do it like the light walking. And my work schedule is kind of weird because I go to work like 10:30 a.m. to 7:30. So I would able to have some time in the morning to make art and come back home from work and then work on it at night. It's always gonna be the day and night, never in the middle.
So you walk, let me make sure I heard, so you walk the dog at night and then
work on the art.
you work on the art?
I do that in the morning too, walk the dogs in the morning.
Mhm.
And then work with the art in the morning before work.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I have two golden retrievers.
Golden
They're very active types.
Mhm. And are they often present when you're working in the studio?
Not physically, like they're actual, like they're there, but I think because there's sheds a lot, they remind me that they're there. Then sometimes I'll have like the fur like stuck on the mattress and pull it out while the paint is dry.
I see.
So yeah, the fur babies are ever present no matter what.
The fur babies.
They're ever present no matter what.
All right, I think this is a good point for us to take a pause. Are you
Yeah.
comfortable with that? I think, so actually we're over time.
I think we're good.
What's that?
I think we're just good.
Good?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think we're just good with like the talk.
Good
What
with
you
the
think?
time. I think so. I'd like to thank each of you for coming to the Artist Talk. I'd like to thank you for not pulling out your phones and giving Narong your uninterrupted attention. I am going to step to the side and open up the floor for you to individually talk to him about the works. I think many of you know Narong already and are familiar with your work, but you might want to talk to him in private and have some questions. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for your attention. Narong,
I appreciate everyone so much for coming. It means a lot to me. I think because with the type of work I'm making, the people who came to see the show means a lot. Because I don't think my work fares well in a super duper accessible commercial setting. And the people who truly came means that it means more. Because the work isn't watered down, isn't diluted, isn't generalized.
right.
So the people who came today means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I thank Talley Williams too. I mean, thank you so much. Even though we just met like 2 times, I think, 2-3 times, I felt like we connected.
We did, and just for the audience, as a point of reference, before you guys arrived, Narong and I talked about alignment and our beliefs. As it turns out, Narong's partner is born under the astrological sign of Cancer. My partner is born under the astrological sign of Aries, which is his astrological sign. And I think it was divinely appointed. And I can use that word in this setting because I'm me and ain't nothing y'all can do about it. I think it was divinely appointed in this setting that he and I come together. I mean, when I tell you, when I came to the exhibit and I saw his first piece, my intention was to see the exhibit weeks in advance. And then I saw on the website, which you curate the website, I saw that it was the last opportunity to see the piece. And the fact that I came out on that day and he was here and I was drawn by my son's experience with ulcerative colitis, I just thought all of that was alignment. And so I would like to echo your sentiment that the people that are here today are the people that were intended to be here today. And I would suggest to those of you that are artists that you not take that seemingly serendipitous alignment for granted, to know that when you are in a space, you are intended to be in that space, and that there is someone in that space that has information for you as well. Thank you. Thank you. Narong.
We can relax now and chill.
Yes. We will.